Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. As we move into the new year, we'll be talking particularly about the challenges that we faced as a country as far as our economic challenges are concerned, as far as our security challenges are concerned. Where do we go from here in terms of getting the economy back on track, in terms of trying to get Pakistan back on its own feet economically, trying to realize its own potential as far as a country that has immense potential. How do we harness it? All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Nasir Iqbal, who's Director, PIDE Micro Policy Lab. Thank you for being with us today. We also have Dr. Shafqat Munir, who is with the SBPI. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Nasir, like I said, there is, of course, we've been talking again, time and again, about where we are economically, about how the 9th review happened, about how the IMF has been, quite, it's been difficult getting back on the review, getting, trying to perhaps negotiate with the IMF, all of that. In your opinion, where are we at this time with regard to economy?
Mark, thank you. First of all, we have to review the 2023 as what went wrong and what was the actual situation of the country. Recently, government published a figure of economic growth, and unfortunately, it's very low. We have negative economic growth, and it was a very sharp decline from 6% to minus 0.17. So this was the first challenge that we faced in 2023. The second major challenge, as all of us know, that the inflation remained very high, around 30 to 40%, and recently the food inflation and other inflationary pressure are very high. So this is the second issue that we have. The third problem that over the last 1.5 years we are facing is the high discount rate. Unfortunately, currently we have a 22% discount rate. It will also increase the cost of doing business, and also it will hurt the economy and create some sort of demand contraction that eventually led to a low economic growth that we observed in the figure published by the government. The next important component that we have to think about is our arrangement with the IMF. So we succeeded in terms of we have a standby agreement with the arrangement with the IMF. We completed first review, we completed second review. Now we are waiting for the approval of the board in terms of the release of the result. The next important component that we have to figure out in the coming year that we face in the last year is the massive unemployment. That also linked with some sort of poverty. Unfortunately, the unemployment substantially increased from 6% to more than 8%. Similarly, that also increased poverty rate as well.
But Dr. Nasir, overall, when we talk about the where situation was when we saw the last government, and then how important it was to bring things back on track. Default became a real issue for us. Do you think that we've to be able to steer us back into that safe place? Are we there yet?
No, it's a very strong statement that we are on the safe track. But we have to we are heading toward the two new things. One is the next government will be coming soon, and second, we are almost close to this standby agreement with the IMF. Now we have to think differently about the 2024. What would be the economic prospect for us when we are going into the 2024? The 2024 would be a starting point for the revival of the economy, especially when the new government take over for the 5 years. Then they must come up with a plan. Already Planning Commission and Ministry of Finance is working on some sort of the key challenges that we faced in last year and what are the solutions. Similarly, on this aspect, PIDE is also working on what would be the strategy, because the coming government that would take over in Feb must have some sort of already preparation in terms of the revival of the economy, because we cannot wait for next 6 to 9 months to form a strategy to make some sort of policy decision to revive the economy. We have to take a very quick decision. And PIDE over the last few months under the leadership of Vice Chancellor Dr. Nazeem Ulhaq is working on that as well. Apart from the government machinery, those are working on that. And we believe if we have to turn our economy, if we have to move on the safer side, and as you said, if we feel that we start our reviving journey, we have to think on reforms. And the motive for the next government should be reforms and reforms.
On that note, I want to go to Dr. Shafkat Munir also. Ji, Dr. Shafkat, can you hear me? Dr. Shafkat?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ji, Dr. Shafkat, we're talking about, Ji, I can. We're talking about economy, and we're talking about the next step forward. According to Dr. Nasir here, he's talking about reform. You know, we heard a lot about reform from the last government. We talk about, you know, before we saw the PDM move in, there was a lot said about reform. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a clearer kind of reform emerge. You know, after we saw the vote of no confidence, then of course the government that came in was only saying that they were stemming the, you know, the blood that, unfortunately, you know, excuse the terminology, but overall trying to deal with what the catastrophic situation they said had manifested economically. Now, do you think the new government's agenda should be based largely on reform also?
I think we have to have reform, but not only economic reform.
Okay.
Reforms as well.
Ji, hello. Ji, can you hear me? I think there's a problem. There's a problem with audio. Ji, Dr. Nazir, coming back, how would you say, you know, he, according to whatever we heard of Dr. Shafkat, he said that, you know, not just economic reform, certainly other reforms are linked.
Yes.
And, you know, could you elucidate on that? As far as reforms are concerned, if we can't touch just economic reform, because there seems to be, you know, need for it all round anyway.
You know, if we take that path, of course, all kind of reforms are super important. But if we take that path and where that other reforms would also contribute to this economic reform, maybe we can again miss the train. My only point is that our top priority should be the economic reform.
Okay.
Of course, it link with the cultural reform, it will link with the institutional reform that we heard over the last 5 to 10 years, that we have to go for the institutional reform apart from this economic reform. But to me, if we, as I in your earlier point said, we have to define the charter of prosperity, and the charter of prosperity is start with the economic reforms. And we believe that reforms in various directions, not in the one direction. Let's start with the market reform. That could be the super important in terms of giving leverage to the business sector. They start flourishing, they start creating employment. That would be the first point. You know, there are a number of industries where there is a lot of sludge, there is a lot of restriction in terms of regulation, rules and other things like that. And we believe that once we try to give them an ease in terms of doing their businesses, probably it will be the starting point. Of course, then we have to think on the deeper issues. Probably as we are thinking about the revenue side, we need to think about the expenditure side. We have a lot of issues on decentralization part, where there is a lot of transfer to the provinces, but provinces are not delivering as per the expectation, and the interest payment are accumulating over the time, and it would be very difficult for the federal government to even finance their current need. We cannot even finance our defense expenditure with the revenue that we have that left after giving resources to provinces. So the reform would be the key word, and
okay,
it looks not only the economic reform but other part of the economy as well, where we have to link with the institutional reforms. As we believe we give some sort of ease to businessmen, we have to reform our market in totality, not in a one way.
Dr. Shafkat, would you agree with that? We talk about reforming our economy, you know, our market in totality. We talk about exports. We talk about, you know, these 4 or 5 important parts of improving the economy. But somehow, hasn't it become, you know, whatever little part, you know, we try to tackle, there's a whole plethora of things that opens up, and it's you know, it's difficult to come to any kind of, you know, arrangement of where to start. Isn't that also true for the economy challenges that Pakistan faces?
I think if we talk in terms of economic, the hardcore economy, then certainly we have to focus on the expenditure side, on income side, the players who are playing in the economy, addressing them, that these are important. But my contention is that as I was broken, my line was broken at that time. I was talking about more than that, because hardcore economy, we know what is the situation. There is a lot of reforms committees already done. Ishaq Dar Sahab has already made several committees, and they have come up with the reforms agenda. They will be applying in next phases if they are in power. Or the others also have their own analysis. Other parties, if they come to power, they have their own analysis about that. So it is not the issue of reforms, thinking about reform. It is undertaking them. And we cannot take all these reforms without adopting a political economy approach. Now, what is the situation of people here in Pakistan now? We have to look with that. I would like to quote here, for example, if we are giving incentive to industry, what industry is doing with the labor? What are the labor standards there? What are the global standard labors which we have committed? Are they competing them? My assessment is that only with $3 to $4 billion, the whole market economy, the labor market economy, can be stabilized, and that funds, if these industry people, if they provide these funds instead of providing bribery to the government official, if they double the amount of the bribery, that comes around 3 to 4 billion, and they can reform this sector. The productivity will be increased, the quality will be increased, and we will be competitive in the global market. So everything is linked to people and policy. So people and policy should be in a way in future, because we have already seen down the line during 2023, we have been having all these difficulties. Some of the economic indicators are stabilized because of the previous government action and now the current caretaker government action. But moving forward, when we are coming to 24 and onward, so that will be a 5-year period. First is that the government should be stable, which I don't think so it will be that stable. But even if it comes as a national government or a coalition government, so coalition should not be weak. The parties who won the 4 seats, they should try to accommodate as many as they can, because it's a national issue. Single party cannot resolve Pakistan's economic.
Basically, you're saying that on issues like the economy, your well-being of your country has to override political considerations. Let me go to Dr. Nasir on this. Dr. Nasir, I mean, that's very relevant. We talk about political considerations. We talk about political, popularity of different political parties. When you talk about forming government, of course, those things will happen after the elections. Whether you get a majority, whether you get a 2/3 or whatever, happens as far as the political makeup is concerned. The point is that the the politicians have to realize that their politics has to override, their well-being, economic well-being of the country has to override all kind of politics.
Yes, of course, that there are few, like a principle, if you really have to grow. If you look into the neighboring country, they believe on those principles, and unfortunately we didn't follow those principles. The first principle that economic should be de-linked from the culture, de-linked from the power, and de-linked from the politics. Unless we de-link our economic decision from the religion, from the culture, from the politics, we cannot grow. This is the real challenge that we are facing over the last 7 decades. We believe on religion part of this economy, we believe on the power structure of the economy, and we believe on the culture part of the economy, and we miserably fail. Now the question of reform, of course, it linked with the unanimity of all the stakeholders. As in previous year program I said, we need not only charter of economy, we also need a charter of democracy and charter of power as well.
What do you mean by charter of power?
Charter of power means we have to create a balance between all the stakeholders in terms of defining their power. They already know their power, but they are crossing the lines in terms of decision making.
You're saying that the parameters have to be set for all stakeholders.
Yeah, parameters are there.
Exercise their power.
Yeah, parameters are there, but we have to create a consensus on the use and the remain within the boundaries. We didn't remain within the boundary. Unfortunately, that is the real issue. Now, coming back to the real question of what would be the priority for us in terms of the next year, I totally agree with the comments that they have. We must have a reforms in terms of labor. We will protect our labor. Even if we give subsidy to the one sector, it might not be trickled down, and we have to give a bottom-up approach as well. Those are the common concepts. But let me figure out the few key areas that we really need to reform.
Okay, let's come back to that.
Yeah.
I will come back to you. We have with us Brigadier Retired Waqar Hassan Khan, who is a security analyst. Thank you so much for being with us. One of the things that are important for the economy also on every front is how stable and secure Pakistan is. Recently, we've also seen, unfortunately, some security challenges. How do you look at, the way that we are dealing with them? How do you look at the future for us in that regard, Brigadier Sahib?
I think Pakistan currently faces two major challenges, I think, as being discussed. One is, of course, the economy, which I think last year was almost to the verge of default. So I think there was an urgency, and that's why you saw a lot of urgency. Even the caretaker government had to step in a time beyond their mandate, because I think that was a matter of survival of Pakistan. And that created basically the security issue also. Somehow the Afghan issue coincided with this, I would say, bad patch. And I think we had to then manage the security part. Also, you saw upstick in terrorist attacks in 2023 especially. And then there were major decisions, basically, then again, of course, keeping Pakistan's economy in view. So one is, of course, the trajectory is now set, and I feel that irrespective of which government comes, even if you've seen, during interim government's period, major decisions were taken on economy, because then, like dealing with IMF, creation of SIFC, and then, of course, is putting it on path to progress, because Pakistan cannot afford. I think I'll agree with the last commentator that we need basically a charter of economy also. It should be bipartisan. There should be no politics with that. So that's if the 5 areas identified, including mineral and mining. I think there was an article in one of the British newspapers. It talked of $4.8 trillion of minerals on which Pakistan is sitting. So that's the kind of potential. Unfortunately, every time we talk of potential, basically it's the execution of the governance part which normally falters.
Let me
take
Dr. Shafkat on this, and then I will come back to you. Dr. Shafkat, do you agree with what Brigadier Sahib is saying? Why does this potential remain untapped for Pakistan? We are always invariably talking about the potential, unfortunately, that is never close to being realized.
I think we need to have a coherence between the policies, sectoral policies, if we really want to tap our untapped resources for economy and for even social capital. So we are not having the policies online. For example, I would quote here, climate change is hitting us largely, hitting us our resources, but we don't have a multi-sectoral joint policy that can address this issue. In isolation, we will having agriculture department or agriculture ministry. They would have their own policy. Climate change ministry would have their own policy. Similarly, provinces have their own policy. So somehow, policy coherence is important if we really want to tap the untapped resources. So that's number one. Number two is that we should have plans ahead, so that we should have a target-based plan, so that we can reach to the targets and plan accordingly to achieve these targets. So there is no target setting for reaching at a certain goal or achieve a milestone. These are some of the problems which we really need to cope with in future, so that we can take up all these issues in line with the policy coherence. Thirdly, the security matter, of course, when economy is not performing, when society or social capital is not really performing, then certainly security becomes a big issue. So we have to have the security connection with the human security, with food security, with water security. We need energy security. All these security linkages are with the physical security as well. So we should, again, here also in the security paradigm also, we have some of the coherence policies, traditional and non-traditional security. Yes.
Fair enough. Dr. Nasir, you heard what Dr. Shafkat is saying. Overall, of course, security is dependent again on these factors. But quite apart from that, in terms of continuity, long-term policies, do you think that that's something very important for this government? Whenever it comes in, the new elected government has to have a resolve to have a long-term continuation of policy, because the disruption that we've seen, successively has also led to, the economy failing quite badly.
Yeah, if we look into the neighboring countries, one of the key factor in their success is the continuation of their policy. So this is there is no denial on it. But unfortunately, even within the same government, we feel there is a significant reversal after 1 year, after 2 years in terms of their policy making, because we don't have a clear direction where we have to go. This is the missing point. Let me take you back to our founder, what SAHI's model was that. How they perceive that what would be the economic model for us, that I feel right now would be used as a blueprint for the overall consensus among the all stakeholders. What was that? The first, the role of government. He defined in his speeches that the government should be facilitator and enabler. The key task of government to create a conducive environment where people can make investment, they can do their business. So for that, government has to reduce their footprint. Currently, more than 70% economic activities are controlled by the government. And we also believe that unless government reduce their footprint, it would be very difficult for us to have economic growth. This was the first major, we can say, a pillar for the revival of the economic growth. The second important pillar is the role of private sector. Unfortunately, we even did not remain consistent in terms of policies to support our private sector. One time we have a nationalization policy, and the other time we have a privatization policy. Again, we are undecisive in terms of what would be the future of private sector. Private sector in any country like India, China, Bangladesh, whatsoever, is the backbone of the economy. We have to give them an environment they can feel free to make investment. Unfortunately, currently,
are we moving? Do you think things have changed for the better recent?
The key thing to me is to create a certainty in the system. And unfortunately, we fail. The currently environment where there is a push and pull all over the here and there, that substantially lead to the uncertainty. And I think last time the court also gave a direction to the election commission that at least create a certainty within your system and give a confidence to people. And we did a very small survey where their people feel that the revival and survival of the economy is depend on the stability. And we have to ensure, and all stakeholders must realize that continuation of the policy again depend on the stability of the system. Political stability, your economic stability, and your power stability. Unless we resolve all these things well before this election, and we go after election in a very consensus mode, we will be able to achieve. You earlier mentioned that we have the potential. Mark, when we have the potential, but we did not give them the right place to show their potential. This is now time, if we feel that we have a youth dividend, we have a youth population, but they believe that the environment in Pakistan is not conducive for us to work. They try to go abroad for the economic opportunity. The third important pillar that Qaid said is the skill of the human capital. If we look into our skill, unfortunately, our learning gap is 5 years in class 5 to 10. A kid with the 10-year education only have education up to 5 years. So we have to give them the right education.
Is there a silver lining?
No, we are not. And the important part is the technical vocational skill. We even can't find a good plumber. We can't even find a good something like that. The last important component is the role of institution. So that's the other the participant also mentioning about the security issue, food security, something like that. That link with the institutional reform.
That's true. Let me go to Brigadier Sahab on this. Brigadier Sahab, I think that Dr. Nasir has painted not a very, what can one say, optimistic picture, but as far as security is concerned, We've also, like, I want to talk about the policy at this time, as far as security is concerned, as far as our border control is concerned. Overall, do you see things moving, getting smoother there overall?
I think there are challenges. I think we've discussed it before also in one of your programs, that it's a legacy of intervention of power. The time we forget that Pakistan, Afghanistan, or the child in a bubble which is very secure. So that reality has to be realized. That there were two superpower intervention, and 40 years, 30 years they were ruling actually. So this created its own security issues because of their agenda. Now coming to, I think the current policies, one is zero tolerance against terrorism. We have seen winning hearts and mind policy in Balochistan started working. A lot of militant factions now breaking up and then coming and joining the mains, which is I think a good. Then is Afghanistan, it's a constant problem or a challenge, but I think things are now moving. Repatriation followed by a very strong border control. And then I think there's going to be a fight for this year, 2024. I feel that I think we'll see stability coming back because there's now consensus, political military leadership, that it has to be wiped out. And I think we have the capability. Now, as far as the silver line, I think I'm very optimistic. The only thing is that a lot of initiatives that the previous governments or the interim governments taken now, they start bearing fruit. Like Recordec will start producing in 2026, which is not far away. I'm sure agriculture production is going to increase because of initiatives. And the countries have done it. And I think we are following certain models borrowed from other countries. And now, proliferation of information and media, it's very easy actually to develop the skill and do it very quickly. And then we have to bring up the masses from Balochistan up to the level of Punjab and Sindh. Of course, there are issues of governance and sincerity of leadership. But I think now it's compulsory because any government, coalition or majority government coming, the first challenge will be to satisfy the people. So they'll become unpopular within 6 months if they don't deliver. So now I think it's writing on the wall that the political leadership has to deliver and all stakeholders have to work toward the better economy. I think security, economy, gradually you'll see a positive trajectory in coming, I think, months.
Do you feel that we will move towards the kind of reform that is needed?
Yeah, definitely, because it's now an understanding is there. If you look at Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's government, there were certain policies, then you had interim government. So continuity of policy is now a compulsion. There is no other way about it where you can't bring any other model. I think trajectory is already set. So irrespective of who comes, they have to follow, and Pakistan's survival lies in that. As we can't be, labeled as a beggar state, and it's become very, very demeaning for people of, almost 250 million. And in purchasing power parity, it's almost $1.5 trillion economy. You can Google it. It's only basically like your tax structure, and then of course the lead capture of, power and economy. They need to control more than 50%. It has to be even, I think, decentralization to local bodies. At times, political party talk of 18th Amendment and provinces are being given, autonomy and a lot of things as per the new list. But what about, then decentralization down from provincial headquarters to districts and divisions and villages? That has not taken place because I think political parties have been kind of selfish. Even in Sindh, you can see it in Punjab or KP. There was a reluctance of, delegation of power. But I think now it's unstoppable. We'll have to improve governance, we'll have to improve economy and deliver it to the people of Pakistan.
Fair enough. Let me go to Dr. Shafkat. Dr. Shafkat, continuity we've spoken about. In terms of what we've seen, measures that have been taken with regard particularly to economy, we saw, seen Special Facilitation Council as being one of the measures, to try to bring perhaps businesses on board in terms of trying to bring investment, all of those things. Do you feel that measures like these will perhaps will ultimately move us towards a more stable, more confidence building? Measures like these can lead to more, investment and economic stability for us?
I think if you look at the 70 years history, there were many action taken like this. But now, I agree with Brigadier Saab that there is a change of mind in the state. The state operators or the people who are in the statecraft, they have started thinking in terms of facilitating people. So secondly, the security issue is also related to the people's security. So that part is now very active in the minds of those who are now at the helm of the affairs at the state level. Governments come and governments go, but if state has changed the mindset and aligned itself with the people of Pakistan, as the last word of Brigadier Sir was also that the people, we have to deliver to the people. This approach looking now working, and that's why this single council that is taking bold decision that may translate into action. Any government comes in power, whether it's the coalition or other, they will be working. The only thing is that now we have to make our project, number one, they should be bankable projects for which we can present before the local investor, global investor, that these are the bankable projects, and there should be a clear-cut line draw that these projects would be beneficial not only for people of Pakistan and for the investors also. The local investor, if their confidence is built, then certainly they will be putting money into that. Secondly, in our project making or in our whatever we want to get it in terms of money or investment in the country, we have to make people as partners within that. So the people may not be contributing money, but people are a soft power. People are a social capital. If we will not develop social capital alongside the economic capital, then certainly there will be difficulty. We have the example in recent history. Soviet Union was a big power some time back, and that's a recent history. Many people know it. It's not just part of the books. We have seen it and how it was crippled because people were out of the the decision making. People were not part of the project. Now this is good that thinking is around that people should be made part of the project. And if people are here, then we have to reform the social contract, which is our constitution. We have to see where constitution is functioning, where constitution is not functioning, or non-functional or less functional. So we have to enhance the role of society, civil society. Criticism should not be taken as enemy kind of approach. If somebody criticizes, it doesn't mean the critic is an enemy. If somebody is supporting, it doesn't mean that that's the supporter only. Sometimes supporter also misguide the leadership. So now the leadership has a responsibility to connect with hardcore economic principles and social and political economy principles. If both will be working together, then certainly we have a hope that with the new mindset.
I think Nasir Sahab, Dr. Shafkat raises an important point. He says that everything has to work, gel in together, in tandem with each other if we want to see the results. For the new government that comes in, one immediate challenge will be IMF?
Yeah, of course, like it's absolutely true that the society and the economy, they are interlinked. And we have to give a confidence to our society that all decisions those are taken by the stakeholder are for the people of the country, not for their own self-interest. For that we need a clear messaging strategy. Especially the brigadiers have gave the example of this repatriation of the Afghanis. It also gave a negative message due to the lack of information and the wrong information flow to the people. So we have to address those concerns. As a way forward, as you mentioned that the IMF, we are like in the early next month, there will be approval of the next installment. But the last discussion would be with the new government when the arrangement, 9-month arrangement will be completed. The last discussion would be probably with the new government, and new government already realized that they will have to go with the IMF, and on that ground, State Bank, Finance Ministry, and the planning, they are also working on how they have to go with the IMF and what would be the new program that they're going to sign. They will sign with the IMF, because without IMF it would be very difficult to even create like a stable economy in terms of meeting the international requirement to repay the debt, to make a payment. Because when the new government would come, definitely they have some own ambition to deliver to the common people by reducing some sort of inflation through various means. So definitely they have to take a aggressive decision in terms of delivering to the people. But IMF is there, so we believe and we must work closely with them to negotiate with our own plan.
Okay.
You know, the real issue with the IMF that we fail in terms of our own decision making, in terms of our own planning. If we have a good plan, we can debate with them, we can negotiate with them. Look, this is our plan. We will show, we will deliver this plan as per the standard, as per the expectation of the international community, and you facilitate us. They definitely, and we have like a talks with the IMF had at PIDE to discuss all these. And they are very clear in terms of, they said if you come up with a clear plan, clear strategy, we are okay with you. We only ask you about those things when you don't have any clear strategy.
Okay.
Then they definitely
So
come
you
up with
think the new government will come in, give its own economic agenda,
Yes.
give them, you know, clearly what their achievables
Yes.
are, and then we will see what happens as far as the IMF is concerned.
Yes, absolutely, and we should also, you know, over the last few years, we outsource our entire planning process, we outsource our policy making process. We should have to focus on our indigenous resources to regain that potential.
What do you think is the trend going to be as far as the dollar and the rupee is concerned?
You know, it would remain the same.
It's fluctuating.
Yeah,
We've seen it
you know,
fluctuating, isn't it?
I feel it's like around the optimal stage,
Okay.
and it will remain with the same like the SBP's policy that
But it's not likely to go, the rupee is not likely to appreciate in your opinion?
No, it will not, because you know you are trying to create a balance. If you give a more power to rupee, it will have, again it will create some issue in terms of balance of payment crisis. So you have to keep a balance between import and export, and maybe the remittances would decline in the future due to the last lag effect, because in the COVID there was very low outflow in terms of migration.
But when does it end? When do you think it ends, when we try to plug these kind of holes in the economy and move towards, you know, long-term solutions? When will that happen in your
You know, for that we need a 1 5 years government.
Complete one 5-year term that has one
with the
agenda and one policy.
complete leverage.
Okay.
You know, the important thing, they must have the leverage, they deliver. Whatever they deliver, it's not an issue whether they deliver right or wrong, but let them to deliver. And then after 5 years, it will be the people of the Pakistan who will decide that whether they deliver as per their expectation or not.
Continue.
And then this cycle will go on. And
fair
for
enough.
that, maybe the one important thing, we have to fix our 50-year plan. That this would be the future of Pakistan in next 50 years.
So then in that case, let me go Dr. Shafkat, then that means we go back to that argument about an economic charter, which is an extended one, which is a, you know, maybe a 50-year one, or have, you know, at least more than, you know, the 5-year one, where all political parties agree to that. Is that the only way forward then?
Yes, that's the way forward, but that's not the only way forward. I just want to add one thing on IMF. I recently wrote an article, How to Negotiate with IMF. Again, with my political economy angle, IMF has two kind of a set of negotiation system. One was pre-2000, and the second one is post-2000. Because, you know, after 2000, IMF literature says that IMF entertains social sector as well, social reform, and social agendas also. So IMF also take care of that. But we are still, you know, in the, you know, the pre-2000 we are negotiating. If we negotiate with IMF with our social needs, and we will not say economic agenda, we say our socio-economic agenda, then IMF has, you know, leverage or a mechanism that provides us a leverage for negotiation on our socio-economic agenda. Problem is that only few economists say, I'm saying that, you know, hardcore economy is important, most important, the lifeline. But political economy cannot be ignored. That's why I have suggested in an article also published by a big English daily that both hardcore economists and political economists, they should stick together, making the notes for the negotiation. So still there is a time, there is a scope when new government will be coming up, when they start the next phase as a permanent government. I hope they will utilize these, you know, these kind of leverages which are available within the IMF negotiating framework.
Fair enough. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Nasir Iqbal, thank you for joining us. Dr. Shafkat Munir, thank you for joining us. Brigadier Retired Waqar Hassan Khan, thank you for your very valuable input. Overall, of course, continuity, as far as policy is concerned, is extremely important. Of course, we all want to move towards long-term reform. Again, it has to be a long-term solution that we want as far as economy is concerned. Security remains a huge part of it. Of course, political security also, economic security also, they will go hand in hand for economic prosperity, economic growth into the next year. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.